Imagine a wave of barbarians not pillaging for treasure but settling in as kings, drafting laws, minting coins, and even shaping the future of medieval Spain. Hi, I'm Infinite, and today on Infinitia Verity, we're uncovering the astonishing rise of the Visigoth kingdom. From their dramatic sack of Rome in 410 AD under Alaric, an event that shook the very foundations of the empire, to forging one of Europe's earliest legal codes in Toledo, the Visigoths rewrote the rules of power in late antiquity. But how did a once persecuted people transform into monarchs, codify law, and then vanish almost overnight in 711 AD? Stick around, because in the next few minutes you'll see how these so-called barbarians left a legacy still echoing through arteries of law and architecture today. By the late 300s AD, the Goths were no single group but two main branches, the Thervings in the west and the Greuthungs in the east. Pressure from the fierce Huns drove thousands of Thervings across the Danube River into Roman territory in 376 AD, hoping for land and safety. The empire agreed to settle them as Foederati allied troops who would farm and serve in Rome's armies. But Rome's officials mismanaged the settlement. Corrupt officers demanded extra food, seized Gothic children as slaves, and failed to respect local leaders. Tensions boiled over at the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD, where Emperor Valens led Roman forces against the Goths. The result was a disaster. Valens was killed, and the Roman army suffered its worst defeat in centuries. Into this chaos stepped Alaric I, a skilled Gothic commander once hired by Rome to help defend its borders. He grew tired of broken Roman promises and, in 401 AD, led his people on raids through the Balkans and Italy. After years of bargaining and blockades, Alaric finally marched on Rome itself in August 410 AD, forcing the city to pay ransom rather than face total destruction. Alaric's goal wasn't mere plunder, it was to secure a permanent home for his people within the empire. Although he died soon after the sack, his actions set a blueprint. Goths could mix Roman customs with their own traditions. In the decades that followed, they moved west into Gaul and then into Hispania, modern Spain, where a new chapter of Visigoth rule would begin. Alaric I was no mindless raider. After the shocking victory at Adrianople in 378 AD, he spent 2 decades negotiating with Roman leaders who promised land and titles, then broke their word. By 401 AD, Alaric led his people south through the Balkans into Italy, using quick raids to cut off supplies and force the empire's hand. In August 410 AD, he reached Rome. Instead of a full-scale assault, Alaric's forces surrounded the city, blocked its food shipments, and demanded a ransom of gold, silver, and hostages. When the Romans hesitated, Alaric ordered a brief sack. His troops focused on state buildings and wealthy homes, sparing churches and common areas. This measured approach shook the world. Rome, the eternal city, had fallen once more. Key point: Alaric aimed for respect and permanence, not sheer destruction. His careful mix of force and diplomacy marked the first step toward a Visigothic state inside the empire's borders. After Alaric's death in early 412 AD, his brother-in-law Aetulf led the Visigoths into Gaul. There they tried to settle peacefully as Foederati, farming land in Aquitaine and fighting other invaders for Rome's benefit. For a moment it looked like integration. Aetulf even married the Roman princess Galla Placidia in 414 AD to seal an alliance. But rising tensions rival Roman generals, local landowners, and Gothic thirst for land pushed them onward. By 418 AD, under treaty with Emperor Honorius, the Visigoths officially controlled parts of southwestern Gaul, yet they still faced supply issues and hostile neighbours. In the 460s, under pressure from new Germanic tribes and dwindling support from Rome, they crossed the Pyrenees into Hispania. There, the rich provinces of Tarraconensis, Baetica, and Lusitania offered fertile fields and weakened Roman administration. In 466 AD, Euric seized power by ousting his brother. Unlike previous leaders who worked under Roman authority, Euric moved fast to make the Visigoths fully independent. Territorial gains. Between 468 and 484 AD, Euric conquered most Roman-held land in Hispania. Cities like Cartagena, Merida, and Toledo fell under his control. Diplomatic break: in 475 AD, Euric refused to renew any treaty with the Eastern Roman Empire. From that moment he styled himself Rex King rather than a federated chieftain. Legal reform. Around 475 AD, he ordered the first version of the Lex Visigothorum, a legal code blending Roman law with Gothic customs. This opened courts to both Goths and Romans under a single system, a major step toward a unified state. Why it mattered. Euric's actions turned a roaming group of warriors into rulers of a defined kingdom. He laid the foundations, territory, leadership and law that later kings would build on. By the late 5th century, Toledo stood at the center of the kingdom. Its hilltop site overlooking the Tagus River gave natural defenses. Roman roads connected it to Cordoba, Merida and even into Gaul. Religious council. In 589 AD, King Euric I held the Third Council of Toledo. He publicly renounced Arian Christianity, the Goths' traditional faith, and embraced Catholicism, matching the beliefs of the majority Hispano-Roman population. Unity through faith. This switch ended decades of religious tension, united the ruling class with common subjects, and strengthened royal power by tying the crown to the church. Cultural life in Toledo blended Gothic metalworking like helmets with animal motifs with Roman building techniques, creating early medieval art that influenced later Spanish and even Islamic designs. The Liber Judiciorum, completed around 654 AD under King Chindasuinth and refined by his son Requiswinth in 654–672 AD, became the definitive Visigoth legal code. It covered civil law, property rights, inheritance rules, and marriage laws. Criminal law, theft, assault and punishment guidelines, commercial law, trade regulations and currency standards. Visigoth towns featured public baths, mosaic floors and basilica-style churches. Farmers grew olives, vines and cereals on large estates. Artisans produced fine metal crosses, votive crowns and ivory carvings, luxury goods traded across the Mediterranean. By the early 700s, internal struggles weakened the kingdom. Noble families vied for the throne. Ricard II, Wamba and King Roderick each faced revolts. Division at the top meant less capable defense in the south. In 711 AD, an Umayyad army led by Tariq ibn Ziyad landed at Gibraltar. At the Battle of Guadalete, Roderick's forces were split by rival Gothic counts. Within days, Roderick was dead, key cities like Seville fell, and much of Hispania came under Muslim control. After shock, only a small Christian holdout remained in the mountains of Asturias. Over the next centuries, Visigoth law and culture would survive in these northern realms, fueling what became the Reconquista. When the Visigoth kingdom fell in 711 AD, its people and laws didn't vanish overnight. Many nobles and soldiers fled north into the rugged hills of Asturias, where they kept Visigoth traditions alive. There, under leaders like Pelagius, they formed small Christian principalities that resisted Umayyad rule. At the same time, the new Muslim rulers in Toledo and other cities often kept Visigothic landowners in place, collecting taxes in exchange for local authority. They even used parts of the Liber Judiciorum to govern Christian subjects, blending Visigoth law with Islamic administration. Over the next 200 years, these two worlds, Christian in the north, Muslim in the south, grew apart but remained linked by shared culture. Architecture with horseshoe arches, mixed art styles, and wine and olive strains passed down from Roman times. By the 10th century, the northern Christian kingdoms began the Reconquista, slowly pushing south. They carried Visigoth legal traditions and symbols like the royal crown and the cross into new courts and churches. In this way, the Visigoths' legacy lived on, seeding the medieval kingdoms that would become modern Spain and Portugal. The story of the Visigoth kingdom shows how a displaced people can reshape history, transforming from refugees to Rome's foes, then to kings who blended Roman and Germanic traditions into law, art and faith. Their careful mix of diplomacy and force under leaders like Alaric and Euric created a state strong enough to govern Hispania for 2 centuries. Even after their fall at Guadalete in 711 AD, Visigothic laws and customs survived under Muslim rulers and in Christian refuges of the north. Those traditions fueled the Reconquista and left marks in Spain's language, architecture and legal heritage. Next time you see a horseshoe arch or study medieval law, remember the Visigoths, barbarians who became the architects of a new European order. If you enjoyed uncovering the rise and fall of the Visigoth kingdom, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest twists. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next episode. Drop a comment below telling us which Visigoth fact surprised you the most, and share this video with a friend who loves a good underdog story. Thanks for watching Infinitia Verity. See you next time.